A random question just popped in my head, so I'm just going to ask you, okay? Like, and I'm not even sure how to answer it myself.
Go for it.
What does it mean to have a spiritual identity or a spiritual self?
Wow. I am not sure I know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's like one of those things which I accept as a part of my reality because I come from the Christian faith, but I have not had the time to sit there and actually think for myself. When I look within me, what does it mean to have a spiritual self, a spiritual identity?
I'll take a stab at this. It may be the answer that is just correct for not correct. It may be the answer that I'll give now. It may change by tomorrow.
Sure.
But what I think it is that a spiritual identity is an identity that situates us as part of a larger transcendent reality. But there can be different ways of characterizing that transcendence, which I think is where different spiritual traditions come in. And then increasingly, I find that there are people who describe themselves as SBNR, spiritual but not religious. And these are the ones who will say, I am spiritual, I am connected to some transcendent reality, but I don't articulate that reality through an established faith tradition. I find some other way to do it. It might be rational humanism. It might be someone who says, I believe that, the insights of quantum theory are such that there is a driving energy in the world, and what you call the divine, someone else who is more faith-based, this spiritual but not religious person might say, I'm going to call it energy, right? And that's what it is. But they are probably still trying to describe similar types of experiences. So I do think a spiritual identity is about having that sense of a transcendent reality. For some people, it may be very well developed. For others, it may be less well developed. Some people may not need it at all, right? For some people, a purely analytical view of the world is sufficient for them to make sense of the world that they're in. And that's okay. But I think for those of us who need the nourishment of that spiritual side, the knowledge of that transcendence is important.
And I'm wondering right now if the commonality or the common ground between all the faiths is just, are we willing to admit that there is something beyond us? There's something that transcends reality, and it somehow connects all of us together.
Yeah.
And we just have many different ways of explaining it.
Yes.
We don't really know what's right, wrong.
Not just explaining, but describing it as well. Yeah. Different ways of apprehension, and therefore different ways of articulating that whole experience. I've developed a friendship with a little Benedictine hermitage in Southern California. It's in Big Sur. Because why else? Why be multi-hyphenated if you if you can't do that, right? In one of the conversations with them, we differentiated between the telos and the skopos of a particular tradition. And this links to what you were describing earlier, right? About different spiritual traditions.
Okay, you're going to have to explain those two difficult words.
Don't worry, I will. Yeah, that's part of the fun here. So the telos is, what we might call the ultimate end that a tradition is looking for. It comes from Aristotle's work, right? So Aristotle talks about the ultimate telos of a life, right? And that is to reach human flourishing. The telos of different faith traditions, therefore, is the ultimate aim that they might be looking to attain. So if you ask some Christians, they might tell you that the telos of Christianity is to attain the creation of a new heaven and a new earth, right? That is what the aim is for, and that is why God's creation began the way it did. It is why Jesus comes to the world and why he has to die for us, and that's part of the overall Christian theological picture. A Muslim would describe it's the ultimate telos as submission to God, right? That's what the word Islam means, right? It means to submit. And in that submission, to transcend physical reality, to transcend yourself and the proclivities of the physical world, but to then reach this higher level of attainment. If you talk to a Buddhist, they might talk to you about nirvana, right, as the ultimate attainment of telos, or moksha if you're Hindu. And so we agreed that me and the monks, we agreed that the different teloses are described in different ways. But what's really interesting is the skopos is what you would call the proximate goal, right? The immediate thing that you can do in order to arrive at the telos. And actually we agreed that while different faith traditions describe the telos in many different ways, the skopos are very similar across different religions. We all are interested in prayer. most traditions have some kind of musicality about them at some point, right? There is also in all traditions, there is a sense of scripture, right? There is a liturgy of word, there is a liturgy of action and helping other people and being ethical. There's a liturgy of music. There is a sense in which silence is important in most of these faith traditions. You look around, I mean, Muslims have prayer beads, Roman Catholics have rosaries, there are beads in Buddhism, so there are many practices, these skopos, that actually are quite similar. And what was interesting there was to say that actually some of the ways in which we try and reach our telos are quite similar. And it's useful to explore those, even if we feel that the ultimate aim that we're looking at is quite different among communities. So very often when we craft interfaith events, one of the things we try and do is to say, where are the points of commonality here, right? Going back to the multiple identities we spoke about earlier, where are those points of similar skopos, even if the ultimate aim, the different telos of a tradition might vary?